Hey guys, what's going on? This is a story time about Skinwalker. That's really spooky. I know it's not the spooky skeleton time of year, but it is what it is. Alright, no joke, no scam. I took that from Scrubs. I know. Hey, he's not using it anymore. Alright, I took it. Anyway, hope you guys are having a wonderful day, and yeah. So I was scrolling on Reddit and I saw this. My Skinwalker story. Before I begin, I would like to say that this is a very long story. It's been something that's haunted me since I was 6 years old. Since my first encounter with it, I've had dreams about it, and there are two very specific encounters with the creature I'm sharing the story about, so I could possibly find on what to do or how to get rid of this creature that's been hunting me. Since I can remember, just for background, I'm a 21-year-old female, and I still worry about this creature finding me, but I'll get into detail why later. So, I would always go camping with my grandparents, who I would call Gammy and Gampy. That's a little strange. I mean, Nana, Papa, Grandpa, Grandma, Grammy, Grandpa. I've never heard Gampy. I guess she probably called him that when she was little and she had a lisp. Anyway, at the end of my school year, I would always look forward to it since I grew up loving the outdoors and in the woods. I especially loved camping. Loved the idea of having s'mores, taking long hikes, being around the campfire, and of course the wildlife we would always see. Now I grew up in California, mostly near city, so the forest was like my true home to me. I always preferred being near trees and dirt rather than buildings and crowded places besides the woods were much quieter and more peaceful. I always felt safe when I was there, like nothing could ever hurt me. But something strange would happen, and at the end of the month of May, I would have this recurring dream. During the last week of school, I would be in the woods, walking alone down a dirt trail. The woods were always strangely quiet. I would continue to walk the path until I saw this red fox poke its head from beyond a tree. Its eyes were always strangely human-like, but they were yellow and somehow looked like a teddy bear's eyes, and it would just stare at me. It wouldn't make a noise or a sound. It would just watch me, usually in my dreams. I would always go up and pet it, that making the fox finally make a noise, usually a soft growl. Then I would continue walking and it would follow me. The first I would have this dream when I was actually around 5 years old, and it lasted until about perhaps 11. Over the years, it would be the same exact thing. I would walk in the woods, find this fox, pet it, then continue my hike with it alongside me. But about having this dream for the fourth time, it would start to walk behind me. That's when I started to feel uneasy about the fox. I could hear it making odd noises, but every time I went back to look, it would just keep walking like nothing was wrong, even somehow giving me a smile. Sorry to go on about the dream, but I now believe that it was warning me of the creature. Now that the dream is out of the way, I can talk about my first true encounter. I was 6 years old and going on a camping trip with my Gammy and Gampy for about a week. Of course, I was very excited for it, being able to barely keep myself in school for the last day of kindergarten. They had picked me up right as the bell had rung and already had the camping trailer attached to my Gampy's truck. I remember he drove an old red pickup truck and they only had 3 seats. We always sat together and I'd sit in the middle. It took about 2 hours to get there and another good hour to find our usual camping spot. It was in some deep woods and far from people, as my Gammy wasn't too fond of being around other people while she camped. As they were setting up the camping trailer, I wandered around the campsite, loving to dig in the dirt for bugs. I had sat down in the dirt and started to dig, but I noticed how strangely quiet the woods were. It was never quiet, not even in the dead of night. I thought it was odd, but being only 6, I didn't think too hard about it. As I continued to dig for bugs, however, I thought I had my Gammy call for me. She would usually call me Sugar Booger, that being my nickname she gave me when I was born. That was all I heard, but it sounded like she was very far away and somewhat sick. Sugar Booger. I looked up when I heard it come from the trees, but there was no way she was there because she was still unloading stuff from the truck. Even at age 6, it didn't feel right. So I walked closer to my grandparents and stayed next to them. I soon forgot about my weird encounter, though, as we began to have fun for the rest of the day. We played card games, sat next to the campfire as we ate dinner, and stared up at the stars. I always loved seeing the stars, and never being anywhere I lived, and we started to get so sleepy around 9 p.m. I believed in 9 p.m. Oh, she said 9 p.m. I believe. Sorry, guys. 9 p.m. I believe. And we started to get ready for sleep or for bed. There was a bunk bed that me and my gammy would sleep on, keeping our luggage on the top bunk, and we would sleep on the bottom bunk. Due to my gampy snoring, he would sleep on the couch of the trailer. I would always sleep next to the trailer window, just in case I couldn't sleep and wanted to look outside. I fell asleep pretty quickly, though. That being the last day of school and all, I was pretty exhausted. I remember waking up maybe hours later, it still being pitch black outside. It wasn't weird for me to wake up late in the night, since I always had sleeping issues. I rolled to the side and onto my side to try to fall back asleep until I heard Sugar Booger. My eyes immediately shot open as I heard my nickname being spoken, but I knew it wasn't either my grandparents. They were both asleep. Never were known to sleep talk before. I started to feel this horrible feeling in my gut, like whatever I was hearing wanted to hurt me. Even at my age of 6, I knew this wasn't normal. Then I started to hear tapping at the trailer window. It was soft but loud enough for me to hear it. Tap, tap, tap. I just sat there, frozen in fear. I was trying to just brush it off as a tree branch or rain, but I just knew it wasn't. I could tell that it was really someone or something tapping on the window. Then I decided to be brave and look. Big mistake. I pulled the curtain away. The only peek in I saw were these two large yellow eyes. They seemed glassy, yet not entirely real. They looked like a giant teddy bear's eyes, but cold and unwelcoming. I remember in that moment I panicked and quickly closed the curtain back up, then hid underneath the blanket. That being the only thing I knew to do when I saw a monster. I could feel tears falling down my face, and I never had anything so terrifying in my life. I just curled up into my gammy's side and clung to her all night long. That damn tapping only got louder and more persistent throughout the night. I don't remember falling asleep, but somehow I did. I do remember my Gampy waking me up around noon saying how if I got up quick enough, we could still go fishing. I didn't want to leave the trailer at all, terrified that whatever I saw the night before would still be out there. I did eventually go outside, but I constantly was looking around, horrified that whatever saw me last night would get me. My Gammy immediately knew I was scared and pulled me into a hug. When she saw me asking what was wrong, I did tell her what I saw and heard. Surprisingly, she believed me. The next thing I knew, she was telling my Gampy that we were moving campsites. It took a bit to convince him, but it eventually started to pack up and hook the trailer onto his truck. I was put into the truck so I could properly sleep, but I just couldn't. I kept feeling that I was being watched, thinking that every little noise was that thing I saw. That if I closed my eyes even for a second, it would get me. Gammy wasn't far from me. I heard it again, but this time it was my actual name, Aaliyah. In that moment, I had never seen my Gammy move so fast. She looked up into the bushes where we heard it. Then to me, she got in the truck with me and pulled me into a tight protective hug. I began to cry all over again, telling her how I wanted to go back home. That's when my Gampy got into the truck as well. Since I was sobbing so hard to the point I was coughing, he agreed we could go home. We started to head out of the campsite. Still hurt that his trip had been ruined by something, but I still didn't know what it was. That's when something in my head told me to look back. I slowly did, so feeling an ice cold fear wash over me as I saw something, a red fox, sitting in the middle of a campsite, sitting there with his large yellow eyes. The same red fox from my dream, somehow curling its lips into an eerie smile. After that encounter, we never did go back to that campsite. We did continue to camp, but it was in a lot more populated areas. I didn't tell my grandma what I saw, but she had told me to trust my gut. She knew that I was sensitive to certain entities and that would help me if I trusted it. Now, this would be the end of the story, but I'm afraid there was one more time I had an encounter. I had this creature, and it was much more terrifying than the first time. The second encounter. Oh shit. The second encounter was when I was 17, many years later. By this time, I knew very well that skinwalkers were what they were now, and I believed that I was still very paranoid at this time. I went near the wooded areas. I was still worried about seeing that fox, but I never really thought about it too much. Me and my two younger siblings were staying at a relative's house for Christmas. Then living up all the way into the mountains area, I think they were my great aunt and uncle, but I'm not sure where they lived. There was no service at all, so unless we hooked up into their Wi-Fi, we had no phones. I didn't mind the house, still loved the woods no matter what happened, although at night I hated how they didn't close the windows or curtains, making it easy for anything to outside to look inside. But I did feel safe while inside the house, knowing that they wouldn't let anything hurt us kids. Luckily, it didn't snow and they lived. And it didn't snow where they lived, so we could go outside and run around. They also had a beautiful black lab being about a year old named Pam. She was very playful and normally wouldn't listen to anyone but my uncle, although she was easily excitable. She was a good puppy. One of the days where we were, my little sister and our aunt went out to the store for a nice girls' day. Although I'm a girl, I wanted to go hiking with my uncle and my little brother. We left pretty early since the hike we were doing was 4 hours of walking into town. It was a really chilly morning, but since we were doing so much walking, it felt great. We also decided to take Pam, it being a good way for her to exercise and have fun. About maybe an hour into our walk, I started to slow down a bit, wanting to enjoy the beautiful forest. It was so peaceful. I could have honestly stayed there, but as we continued to walk, I started to feel something odd. I noticed how quiet the forest suddenly became, hearing only our footsteps and my brother talking to our uncle. Pam noticed it too. Her ears were going straight up and growling softly. I started to pick up my pace to get next to my brother, worried that possibly a coyote or a mountain lion was nearby. I knew, though, that they wouldn't be out at this time. Even if they were, they didn't walk near the roads. My little brother was only 9 at the time. So, my uncle noticed the silence as well, and telling us to stay close to him, and Pam, who was now next to me and still growling, I began to feel a horrible feeling again, that ice-cold fear. I once felt that when I was 6. I tried so hard not to think of the creature, but it was all I could worry about. I was scared. I felt like I was back to being the scared little 6-year-old girl again. I had to stop for a moment, though. Seeing my shoelace come undone, I quickly kneeled down and I tied it back as fast as I could, trying to hurry and just get out of there. That's when I heard it. Aaliyah. In that moment, my heart dropped into my stomach. My eyes were widened, and I could feel myself starting to shake from fear. It was right next to me. I heard it clear as day. I slowly turned my head, and there it was, the same red fox, still having those horrid yellow eyes and same demented smile. Only this time, I saw it much more clearly. Its fur looked so matted and disgusting. The smell it had was so rotten and decaying of flesh. Mixed with garbage, its limbs were much worse and much longer than any normal fox, the back legs bending completely the wrong way. Those eyes were still the worst thing about it, but now they looked emptier than I had remembered. I wanted to scream, to run, to cry, but I couldn't. I was frozen, as I was too scared to even blink. Then I heard her speak again. This time, however, it mimicked my little brother's voice. "Found you." Before anything else could happen, Pam suddenly jumped in front of me and started to bark like mad, snapping and growling so aggressively that it scared me out of a frozen trance. When I looked back, it was gone. I used that moment to run to my brother and uncle, who didn't see what I saw, as they were too far ahead now. But I heard my uncle start to pray and sing a song underneath his breath, keeping my brother and myself close to him. I was just too scared to even look back, so I just kept my eyes on the ground and refused to stop walking. Pam had stopped barking, and she was still loudly growling, and never left my side. As we continued our hike, my little brother was a bit worried, but he just thought it was a coyote. When we finally made it back to the town, my uncle had called our aunt and told her to pick us up, saying something about how it wasn't safe for us to walk back. Thankfully, she came to get us, but she was confused since we were talking about the hike for days. On the car ride back, Pam never left me alone, and she was right with me the entire time. She knew that thing was after me, and she protected me. I was very grateful that she saw, or that she was with us, but who knows what would happen if she wasn't. When we got back to the house, I walked and talked by my uncle and aunt. Once I told them what happened and I saw they had started to pray and check that all the locks were shut tight, my aunt kept putting something around the doors. I now believe that it was probably ashes, but I never did find out. Unfortunately, this made our Christmas vacation cut short, as they were worried that I was not safe while still in the woods. We had to be taken home. The next day, them making an excuse of how there was an emergency with a friend and that they had to help them out. I felt horrible that this Christmas was ruined, but once again, I didn't leave the woods. I truly felt safe again. Before they had drive back home, though, they told me that it wasn't my fault, and luckily it didn't hurt me or the other kids. It did make me feel better, but it still brought up a lot of questions and worries. It was still around? How? Why? What did it want with me? Does it want my skin? My soul? Was I just going to be tormented by this thing forever? I still don't have any answers to these questions, and that's what really scares me. Now, I've long moved from California, and now I live in Kentucky. I do live in the woods, but so far, that thing hasn't found me. I know that seems very stupid on my part, but life's changed a lot when I was growing up. I was given no other options to live somewhere else, and my grandpa in Kentucky was kind enough to let me live with him. So please don't call me an idiot for moving into the woods when I had no other choice. Anyways, while I am happy it hasn't found me, I'm still worried. Can it still find me? Is it still hunting me? It's not close to anyone who knows truly on how to get rid of this thing, and that's why I'm telling my story now, so I can possibly find help. So please, if there's anyone out there who does know how to help me, contact me. Alright, like I said, why the hell are you going into the woods if every single time you go into the woods for the most part you're getting attacked? This is a longer story. With that, I hope you guys are having a great day, and yeah.
Yeah. My dad used to say, whatever is whatever. Never may be never, but it's ever that keeps us going.